Welcome from beautiful Medellin, Colombia. Super excited to do our first podcast in the office with the legend, Dale Harris.
Amazing.
Acoustic Coffee on Instagram.
Yes, sir.
Super exciting, Ricardo.
We're super excited to be here. You know, honestly, I walked in this room yesterday for the first time here in Medellin. You can see the view back here is amazing. It's pretty beautiful. And I was like, wow, because 2 months prior, I came here and I looked at this space and it was just an empty shell.
Yeah.
And then we sat with the architect and we, this is the plan. This is what we would like to see, right? And then, but we would like to get it done in 2 months. I don't know anywhere else in the world you can get a job like this done in 2 months, right? They said, no, we got this. And I'm like, sure. I know it's going to be delayed. So when I walked here yesterday and I saw it, I was like, it's done. I'm like, no kidding, man. What's your, I'm going to put you on speed dial for any other projects we have. And exactly
You're
right.
hired. Yeah,
exactly right. But we are so happy to be here, Dale. I had the honor and the privilege of traveling with you in 2019 here in Colombia. It was an amazing trip. So when Nick said, hey, let's invite Dale to the podcast, you couldn't have asked a better guy to come. So super excited to have you here, man.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, and also thank you for arranging that, because it wasn't my first trip to Origin, but it was my first, I think, really meaningful one where I was really learning, like meeting people, and I've spent a bit of time since in other parts of Colombia, but nothing beats your first time, right? Nothing.
First time is first time. It's memorable. If it's good or bad, you know.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. It's awesome to have you here. Just to kind of ease into things, let's kind of tell us a little about, you probably have a really long journey, but maybe tell us a little about along your journey, what you kind of learned along the way, what you kind of faced that was like hard as, when you came into coffee and where you are now, and like, what are some of the things that you've overcome in your career, and then we can jump in from there.
Okay, so I try and keep it brief and try and keep it around things that might be worth talking more about later. So I'm one of the very few people I've met that chose to work in coffee. So I had a career. It was a small career. I was like 23, 24. I was selling clothes and working for companies doing that, and there were changes in the business and I was left without a job, and I knew that the thing that I got the most benefit from in that job was doing something that I loved. So I knew that it needed to be something that I really believed in, and that was more important than the money or lots of other, very smart things that maybe should be important in your life. But I really wanted to see how far I could take what I'd done with coffee at home and whether I could make a job with that, because there's so much to love in being a barista and working with, a product that's amazing and changing, that's tied to so many stories, but also the cafe space, which was the first thing I fell in love with in coffee, where someone's really nice to you, for a few minutes in a day, and you build good relationships and friendships. So I was like, maybe I could do that, and maybe it doesn't matter if it doesn't work out, but it's worth a shot. Times have changed. There's a lot of things out there now that weren't out there then, but I was really starting from zero. I was in a rural part of the UK, so I wasn't in a cool city. There weren't many cool cafes in the UK at that time. I'd say there were probably 3, and they were all in London. So where I was, there was no community, there was no latte art. This was all stuff that I could see online and I was learning about as I was falling more and more in love with coffee and deciding that would be a job. So my first kind of gig was I got a job with a large chain, a European equivalent of Starbucks. And I was wiping tables in a petrol station basically for 3 months, and then working really busy queues and beginning to use an espresso machine. So that was my first chance to make coffee and feel a bit of that cafe business. Because I'd done store management before, I was able to progress pretty quickly. I understood what someone would be looking for in a member of staff. So then I ended up managing a few shops for them. I enjoyed working for them. I enjoyed being with the customers and with the staff. But I also realized pretty quickly that you get your basic education in coffee to make the products they want you to make, and that's pretty much it. There was no desire for people to know or care more about coffee than that. They had other priorities.
Sure.
So I found a job that was working as a regional trainer, which was in a large commercial company that supplied cafes and chains with equipment. And I spent a couple years working for them, first as a regional trainer, and then because I was very passionate about coffee, I wanted to go somewhere, and because they had customers that needed that, they kind of built a route for me to grow in that business. That's where I found competition as well. And competition, you know, we can talk about trophies and stages and the kind of the fun, visible parts of it, but really at the beginning, and I still see it today in different communities, in different places where I travel, the greatest thing that competition does is it builds a community. It builds a network
Absolutely.
of people who share something, you know, and an excuse to be in a room together, talk about things and be passionate about things. So I found my tribe.
Becomes family, right?
Yeah, and amazingly quickly, because of the boiler room kind of pressure of competition, those relationships like become really strong really fast. And as with, you know, with your coach and with the other people involved in your team, your friends who are helping you, but it's also the other competitors, right? So I'm still really close with 4 or 5 people that were in my first regional heat of maybe 6 people.
Wow.
You know, so we're all still working in coffee. We're all still close to each other. We've all gone on different paths. So now there's, you know, an equipment manufacturer, lead kind of community engagement person for a really big equipment brand. There's a green buyer for a huge company in the UK, and he's done all kinds of different things. And so competition can be an engine of personal growth, and it can be an engine for really building a career regardless of how many times you compete, whether you win or lose. It's all the kind of intangible value that really sticks with everyone who's part of that process.
Absolutely. This is a great journey, and Nick and I were discussing, you know, the barista journey, you know, and we say this, there's all these talks and conversations of baristas, you know, asking for better pays or asking for more opportunities and so on. But as we look at the barista role as a whole, it's almost like an entry level to coffee, and it's a good entry level to coffee because you get to know the product, and you also get to actually present that product to the customer, right?
You do the most valuable part,
right?
You do that one part where something that so many people have been involved in, and yes, there's been like transfers of money along the way, as you know, farmer to exporter to their customers, roasters, whatever. But all of that value only gets realized when somebody, you know, pays for it and enjoys it.
Absolutely.
And you're right at the end of that chain, and all of that value, and also you get to create it, right? You get to control whether that quality is delivered in the cup, which is something you can get lost in regardless of anything else. But you can also shape how much value the customer gets from it, because it's never just the coffee.
It's true.
Some days I want it to be just the coffee, but it's never just that.
It's never just the coffee. It's true. And I think that if people are passionate, just like you said, you wanted to work in something that made you proud and passionate about. Yeah. I would say that as a barista, it's as an entry level, it's the best opportunity for you to really enter the industry.
Yeah.
And then if you're really passionate, like you described, you're actually going to look for different opportunities.
Yeah.
You're going to evolve. And in your case, for example, you actually found the competitions, right? And then as you went, and my question to you is like, how many years did you actually compete? And how long before you started in that first barista job until you actually started in the found the competitions as an opportunity? Yeah. How many years? What's the gap there? And then how many years after you entered did you compete?
So we'll split it into a couple things, and there's really interesting questions there. So in total, I competed for 9 years.
Wow.
Which I wouldn't advise to anyone. Right? That's not how you need to do it. There are better ways. I learned slowly. The competition, but also the industry was developing really fast through those kind of 9-10 years. I did it in 2 kind of stages. So I had a first 4 years competing, and then I had a year where I did Brewers Cup, which was brand new, but I wasn't really doing anything. I wasn't putting the work in. And then another 4 or 5 years, I can't remember. There was a year in between when I didn't compete in that competition, and that's part of the story, and that's part of where you kind of get lost in the game of competition rather than kind of what it's for. But my first one, So my first competition was in 2009. So that was the World Finals that year were in the US, in Seattle, I think. But I had a benefit. So I started working in coffee in 2007. I started thinking about working in coffee in 2006. That's kind of when I made that decision. And my first goal in coffee was, I'm going to open a shop, and this is why I've got this bad Instagram handle. It's Acoustic Coffee. It's a solid, if you want to invest, I'm ready.
Pretty cool though.
I was gonna open a cafe in a small seaside
It's still
town.
up for grabs, huh?
Yeah. The opportunity is there, and I'm ready. I was going to open a cafe that was going to serve really nice coffee, which I didn't know what that was. Probably black coffee. It was going to be like really pure, like good experiences. Because I probably read something on a blog once, it's black coffee is where it's at. So it's going to be black coffee and acoustic folk music, which were my two like geeky interests.
Sweet.
And I was pretty sure that
you're almost convincing me to start investing on this.
I didn't set that up, and there's lots of good reasons. One of them was probably the wrong place. It's so much you learn when you see other people set up cafes and you're part of it. Probably the wrong place, probably the wrong like Venn diagram of community groups. Like most people go out and see music at night. In the UK, very few people drink coffee at night, so maybe I'd have had to do other things. And who knows what a business becomes? You have your plan, and then it evolves. But so I had this idea, and I met a couple potential suppliers. I was writing my business plan. Really good guys. They still work in coffee. It was the first time someone poured me latte art. They did it in a cup, with a hot chocolate, with this beautiful Rosetta thing. I was like, how did they do that? Yeah, do it again. And
it's almost like when you first drink that first sip of like a natural Ethiopian, and you get all those like fruits and blueberries and so on. It's unforgettable, right?
Yeah, and again, you can have better coffee, you can see better latte art, but you never have that first time that it really like resonates with you.
Absolutely.
So I met the supplier, and we were chatting about coffee and chatting about how this business might work, and they were like, you really should work in coffee before you like set up a business. Different job. And I was like, yeah, maybe it's not a bad idea, so I got this job. But he was also competing in barista competitions, so this is the first time I heard of this. I also subscribed to awful kind of trade magazines, which, they still exist, I'm sure, but like back then they were awful. It's like the gossip every month of which small like distributor of Lavazza's got bust or whatever.
Like the National Enquirer.
Yeah, it was pretty much that. But one of his employer at the time, a machine company, the La Spatiale distributor, put in a full-page ad celebrating the success of their employee who'd been the UK Barista Champion and had made it to the finals in Bern in Switzerland, I think, which was James Hoffman. And so I was like, this is a thing that people can do really well.
Nobody else than James Hoffman.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like setting the bar too high. And, I didn't know who he was. I don't think he knew who he was then. He's certainly a very different person
Still
now.
discovering who he was too, right?
But yeah, there was this thing. And so I started, watching the few videos that were available and learning about that. The next year, the UK Barista Champion came from a cafe. It was still like 2 hours drive from me, but it was in the southwest in Cornwall. So I saw him compete at a trade show. I chatted to him. I said, would you mind if I came and like said hello? And I met him and learned a little bit about a competition from that. And at that time, I just started this new role. So I'd worked with Costa. I work with this chain called Costa. I worked with them for about a year.
That's all right. It's a big one.
Yeah. They've grown too. Worked with them for about a year, 18 months, I think. Was my journey with them. And I moved to this new company, and that made competition kind of possible. They were a commercial company, so it was commercial blends. But this former UK champion, Hugo, was just really warm, really open. It's like, there's nothing to it. Like, the only way you're going to learn if you like it, and the best thing you can do is try it. Enter your heat and like see what it feels like, try it on for size. So when the places came up, I booked my space, went to a kind of warm-up training exercise that a local kind of ancillaries supplier who was hosting the regional heat set up. And they had James Hoffman there doing our workshop or something, a training thing.
That's so cool.
And so I was immediately like plunged into this world of people who knew each other and they were really friendly. They wanted to share. James had just come back from winning the World Championships in Tokyo at that point, or his competition year, and he was encouraging people to do it. He was judging that year, so it felt like a safe space. And I think that's the biggest barrier for a lot of people that first time, whether they started working in coffee or not, is just not knowing what that space is like. And I'm sure assuming the worst. I think I assumed the worst. So I went to that event.
It's a competition. So you think like the whole thing is like, oh, it's just a competition.
People against each other.
Notion of competition is being very competitive.
Yeah. And I'm not a competitive person. No one believes this. But I don't play any other sports or sports against people. I didn't really do that growing up. We did sports at school and I enjoy them, but I enjoyed being kind of average at the back and doing whatever. There are things that I'm good at and things that I weren't good at, but it was never training on a Saturday to do a thing or whatever. And this was pretty much through my whole competition career. It wasn't a solo pursuit because there were lots of people helping me, and it was about being with other people, but it was about self-improvement. And on my best days, it was purely that. It was about testing yourself.
Yes.
Compared to your peers, seeing where you are. You can question the test, but it's a test that exists, right? And it's a very finite one. It's a very thinking about business, there's some good books in there about finite and infinite games.
Yes.
A lot of great business, what I believe a great business is all about the infinite game. So it's how does this never end? How do you bring people with you?
Yes.
That doesn't need to be growth forever, which I'm not as comfortable with, but it's all pretty scary when there isn't a finish line, there isn't a set goalpost to achieve.
It's true.
Competition gives you a clear goalpost.
Yes.
It's not that you just have to keep going. It's you're going to do this for a set period of time and you can push yourself as hard as you can up until that deadline. Yeah. And after that, it's gone. It's done.
It's true. I love what you said here, because a lot of people sometimes they are competing and they're comparing themselves with somebody else that is out there. I think that in a sense it's good to know or good to see other people and successful people and what they have done and learn from their success. But I think that when you actually look and inside and you are comparing to yourself and how you can be better day after day, I honestly believe personally too that's the best approach. How can I be better tomorrow than I am today? And if I'm comparing myself in this realm of competitions, the only really competition that I have here is myself, because am I limiting myself in what I can achieve? People shouldn't say, oh, you cannot do that. I cannot say that to me. I cannot do that. You need to push the limits, and then really work hard to actually be better tomorrow, right? And you said that clearly. It's amazing.
So I know that to be true, but you're constantly fighting against all the distractions that are out there.
True.
I don't compete anymore, but I still compare myself to other people, and I know it's destructive and problematic, but it's always like, well, what are they doing and how are they growing? And should I be doing that? Have I made a wrong decision because I'm not following the path they're on and they seem to be successful?
Yes.
And competition encourages that, because it's very visible what other people are doing, where they're succeeding, where they're failing. There's scores at the end and there's placings.
True.
And actually so I said there were like 2 stages to my competition. The first one was, it came from a pure place. So I wanted to meet people, I wanted to improve myself. I had no expectations.
Safe space.
Yeah,
safe
exactly. Yeah. Did okay in my regional. They were like, the coffee could be better. Maybe think about that. But I did well enough that I had enough confidence that I made it to the national semifinals, where I didn't do very well, but I did well enough that I felt comfortable with it. And then you get a record of what you did wrong, where you lost points, and that's a real finite thing. It's like, well, if I just improve these things, I can do better. And the second year I competed, I had spent a year thinking about those things and working on those things. And I got a real, concrete proof that effort was worth something, because I placed much higher. The judges were really happy with what I'd done and what I'd learned. So that was a really positive experience. And if I'd have ended it then, I would have still told everyone that competition is something you should do.
True.
I know there's a lot of people who their first competition experience, sometimes they're pushed by other people, or by other needs, or that they have to do the thing, and it's not a happy experience. And that's the biggest kind of danger zone, is if people have a bad first competition for lots of small reasons. No one's bad intentions, but the wrong words during a debrief, or the wrong comment from another competitor, or even someone saying, well, it's all subjective, right? So there's no way that you can control whether you win or not. Right at the beginning can change your idea of what it can be. I had a great first experience that was enough to like hold on to. The year after that, I competed again. I didn't place as highly, but I could still feel myself growing as a barista. So my placing history was, I don't know, 12th or 13th the first year. Second year I came second, and it was a fluke, and it was it was basically because I was very passionate about what I was doing, and I communicated really well on stage, and my coffee was okay. But I worked really hard, and it was all this personal growth, so I was really proud of that.
Absolutely.
And I knew it was a fluke, but it was also like, this is possible. Yes. If I just push a little harder, and if I get better at the things. The next year, I had moved to a small roastery that I then worked with for 12, 13 years, that I was really proud of the work that we did at Origin and the coffees we were sourcing. I genuinely still believe at that time we were one of the best roasteries in the world. Like, no one could touch us with our sourcing, particularly for the size we were, because we weren't very big, and for the passion and for the knowledge in the business. That year I came third. I was like, okay, shake it off. The next year I think I came fifth. The year after, I think maybe I came fourth. And it was just...
Well, that's amazing, though. I'm sorry, just jumping in here, because when we talk about, I'm comparing to myself, and I'm looking to improve, and the competition first is myself, and I'm trying to be better tomorrow and then better the following day. But sometimes growth is not a straight up path, right? Yeah. So you clearly in your path, the description you're just, the story you just told us is, I went up to like second. Yeah. I was like passionate. I was working hard. I saw improvements, and then I did fourth, or third, fourth, fifth, and then you start climbing again, and that's growth. Yeah. And that's like improvement. It's not like a straight up line, right?
Yeah. And it's in reality, each year I was growing as a barista. I knew more about coffee every year, and I was more engaged and understanding with what I was doing, the choices I was making. I understood so much more about coffee at that point, but my placing was going down. And there's two things at play. One is like measure what matters. And that placing really isn't what matters if you're looking for personal growth.
Measure what matters.
Yeah, and like my scores were probably higher. People were giving me better feedback on my presentation, on my coffee knowledge, whatever. But all I could see was this number was getting smaller, getting further away from this goal that was a made-up goal. They're all made up, right? And so I basically got to a point where I was like, this is nonsense. I know more than the judges. The judges they're all against me. They have an agenda or politics or something like that. So, I went home and cried about it, sulked for like 6 months and thought that it was kind of over for me. Then the next year, all my friends who had been competing on and off through that journey, they were competing. So I went to see their regional, and I was just watching them on stage, and I was kind of inspired again by how powerful it is when you can see someone on their journey, when they're telling their true story about something they're passionate about. And I could see how they were growing, and I was like, I've literally done nothing this year. I've learned without that like completely false but like safe sandpit to play with some of the ideas and force myself to learn things. I was just doing more of what I did the day before. So I was watching them compete, and I was like, I really, cut off my nose to spite my face just because the placings weren't working out for me. If it's just about winning and I can't control that, that's a bad place to be. So I tried really hard to get over myself and get over that and go like, I like doing this. I enjoy competition. I enjoy the people it introduces me to. So I want to do more of it. Even if I don't succeed, if I don't win, that can't be the only goal. So what could I do if I took that away and tried a different strategy? And so that the year off really refreshed me, and I learned probably more in that year by not doing it and feeling what I lost.
Absolutely,
the absence.
It's powerful to hold space as well. Just to take a step back. Yeah, take a 20,000 feet view.
Yeah, but it's
you learn a lot.
It's the hardest thing to do. Right? It's the hardest thing to do is stop and really think.
Because especially when you like so much what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's so hard to do that break, right?
Yeah.
So I want to take a step back a little bit, because you mentioned a few things that kind of go on a similar topic of like a lot of it seems like you just have to figure it out along your journey, like as a barista competitor. Would you consider that as a barrier for a lot of baristas, kind of like just being thrown in there, like they just have to figure it out? Or is that just kind of part of the process and part of the journey is like competing? And if it isn't a barrier, what are like other barriers that like, that baristas face when they like going through this journey and to getting to a point like that you got to apparently?
Great question.
So part of it you have to learn. There's nothing that beats actually standing on the stage to understand how it feels and the mistakes you make under pressure and why you're doing this preparation, because it's only when something goes wrong that you realize, oh, we prepared for this, we have a way around it, right? And that you really only learn by doing. But there's a lot in the competition so there's maybe two parts of this. For your first year competing, or for your first pretty much any of the barista competitions that are out there have some kind of technical score sheet, which a lot of people kind of ignore. It's not worth as many points. It's not as significant particularly in the Worlds. The finalists don't have technical scores because it's assumed that when they get to that point, let's remove that little training wheel kind of thing. But those technical skills are really important, and it doesn't matter whether the system that the technical score sheet suggests with how you make coffee is the right or the wrong way. It is a way, and if you do anything in coffee consistently, if you're following a process, you will get consistent results, and then you can change a bit of the process to get a better result, right? If you're all over the place and trying different things all the time, you never really understand what's having an impact and what's changing the coffee or controlling the flavor. So that's a very easy self-learning tool. It's Amazing. There, everyone can see what people are being scored on, and it impacts the sensory scores as well. So consistent shot times mean consistent flavor, consistent dosing and tamping means that those shots will have consistent brew times, and it all kind of feeds into itself.
Focus, consistency, and discipline, I guess, right?
Yeah. And they're good skills for life, right? They're good skills for behind the bar. So, every shop benefits from having a barista or two go through competition, because every shop should be looking at those score sheets and going, well, do we make coffee this consistently? Like if you scored it as a competition, these 5 baristas, are they ticking the boxes? Are they consistent? And are they noticing when they're not? And technology's come in over the past 10, 15 years. This has made a lot of that easier.
Absolutely.
I was using machines that they were hard work. And sometimes I'm like, that should be part of the test. You should have an awful machine.
It's not fair these days. Exactly. This guy's got it made now.
Yeah. But like, that is also part of it that, you turn up to a shift, particularly if you're working on, an outside coffee stand with a generator, whatever. Things go wrong with your machines, your automatic tamper breaks, and you need to know how to make coffee without it. Sure. So a lot of these, competition was designed as a training tool for baristas and something that would help celebrate and validate what a barista looks like to be an ambassador for the industry. And that was very intentional in the beginning. Just like the Olympics had intention to share like ideas of brotherhood and internationalism. So that bit, the barrier to entry is quite small. You can see the way. The interpretation of some of those rules can be a huge barrier, particularly when there are trends that happen in coffee, there's changing technology, and maybe your first year, you always learn a lot. It's your first time on the stage, first time getting that feedback, first time somebody maybe tastes coffee with you and you really think about flavors. The second year, you apply a lot of those learnings, and you will definitely get better. You'll be better at playing that game the second time you play it. As you progress and as you get into the finer detail of what's the difference between an espresso that is very good and scores 4 to an espresso that's very good but not quite excellent, so 4.5. Oh, well, it was like, it wasn't quite orange, it was blood orange to me. And you get or particularly with some of the technical things, ideas of what good tamping is and good distribution change over time. There are, in every competition, there are rules that everybody kind of accepts and acknowledges get used but aren't written down, and I hate them. If I'm on any mission with competition, it's if I can't see the wording that you've used to describe what I did wrong or what the competitor that I saw did wrong, if I can't find that wording in the rules, you cannot score against it. You can't make up your interpretation of whether something is good tamping or not if it's consistent, because it's asking for consistent tamping. Absolutely. And there are some gray areas. They're really small, but what you see happening is, particularly in national competitions and particularly smaller competitions, there'll be a group of judges who've been doing this for a long time, and they'll be training other judges and the way they muck the sheet and all of these parts, and it becomes this kind of, oh, this is how we do this. And there's nothing wrong with that. It might be the right way to do things, but if the competitors don't know, if they're not connected to that community, if they haven't spoken to a judge, this is what we mean by acidity. Or, you know, and I've got lots of examples of these, and again, never any bad intentions, but for a while in my national competition, there was a rule, an unspoken rule, that if you said it's got an orange acidity, I can't exactly remember, if something had an orange acidity, that was only a description of acidity, and they would not regard it as a flavor descriptor. Or that if you said orange acidity, the orange flavor has to be present, and one way or the other.
I see.
Like,
very
and
technical, very particular.
And there's hundreds of ways that these things can be interpreted, but if they're not written down and if everybody isn't briefed on it, it creates upset and discontent, and it's not fair. Because there'll be some baristas who have access to that secret knowledge, either because they've done it before for 9 years and they know the trends or the fashions, or because they're better connected and have more information. And you know, we can talk about the whole coffee industry. Like nothing destroys problems more than transparency, right? Transparency and equal access to information could destroy the seed market, or at least make it work. Maybe.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
So do you think that like that sort of technicality? I mean, my interpretation of it is that sort of technicality almost seems to be unproductive to what, not just like in competitions, but if you start to apply that kind of technicality in the industry as a whole, like you said, it becomes destructive and unproductive versus like progressive and productive, right?
I think, and the competitions that I've been in, and actually I've had ups and downs, and I've had emotional experiences that have been good and bad, but my overall experience from every competition has been positive when I've had enough distance to look back on it. And I know that every debriefing I had and every mistake I made in competition actually helped me effectively win the whole competition in the end. Like I was learning the things that I need to learn to get there, some of which is resilience, some of which is self-belief, and some of it is the confidence to go away that's not on the score sheet and accept that you might lose points on it. The rules and the scores are meant to be fair and clear, and to leave enough room for interpretation that it doesn't get in the way of progress. So there are things that are not spoken about in the rules, because if they put a rule in there, then everyone follows the rule, and we don't challenge this paradigm or this accepted knowledge. And most of the best things that have come out of competition that have then gone into the way we make coffee in the community, be that things you see at the Brewers Cup with, you know, people using different kettles with different temperatures of water, which is not in any training course. Like there's no training course that says, 60-degree water plus your 90 plus your triple rinsed filter or whatever. Like, so that's when the joys of competition is there is enough room for those things to be challenged. On the other side of that, if there is enough gray area that someone can think they're playing by the rules and doing what it takes to score those points, and then they score really low because of an interpretation thing, it upsets them. It creates lots of questions about what's right and what's wrong. And I think the only way to overcome, and you know, I love everyone who's involved in the competition, judges, the volunteers, the people who have, you know, written those rules and worked really hard on refining them. The biggest thing that could be developed that would really make the most impact, particularly on changing rules in the future, would be changing the appeals process and finding a way to make them more live, so that it isn't something that happens after someone's won a competition.
That's an incredible suggestion.
Yeah.
Incredible suggestion, because as many rules as the competitions have for the judges. And I had the opportunity to judge the Brewers Cup 5 years in the US, and then I judged the barista competition, the nationals in Panama. Yeah. And my trainer there was Danilo Lodi. So if I didn't learn anything, you know who to blame.
For sure.
Danilo is the one. But there are so many gray areas. Yeah. But if you actually improve the appeal process in a live, before even the final results are announced, then you can actually overcome some of these challenges or some of this unhappiness that happens, and we hear
and it happens in every competition, and often I don't think it'll change the results.
That, my friend, is a great suggestion, and we need to really take and challenge the competitions in the WBC and the WC, because part of what we do here at Rooted in Coffee is kind of like raise some problems, and then really suggest some potential exactly
solutions.
Right,
And the shape of that will be really difficult to design. I understand all the logistical barriers, but it is, in terms of barrier to entry or problems, it is the biggest place where we lose great potential competitors. Is they have a bad experience through the debrief or through whatever, and it's often not the judges and it's not the score sheet or that anything was particularly wrong. Often I don't think it would change the results, but it's the fact that people don't feel they can have that conversation, or they don't have the time with those people to really learn. And if it's a learning process, you learn when somebody points you out on what you did wrong and has a real honest conversation around it.
And technology is so advanced.
Yeah.
15 years ago, 20 years ago, when people talk about having a VAR in a soccer match, football match, people, my dad would say, this is insane. This is crazy.
Yeah.
This is, you're changing how the game is played. You're actually making the game more boring, but actually now you're making the game more fair.
Yeah.
And if even in soccer competitions, they apply technology to make it a fair game.
For sure. There's always a way to do it.
Exactly.
Soccer as an example, it took 30 years.
Right.
And I think at the same time, and I say this to a lot of competitors, particularly ones who, a lot of people who don't compete because they're like, well, this doesn't represent how I think about coffee. That, they're wrong, I'm doing this whole different thing, and they just wouldn't understand. And that's fine, nobody needs to play the game, but anyone who plays the game has to agree to sign up with the rules as they are, good and bad. That's the game you're playing. It's not real. It's a choice to play it, and to succeed at that game, you're playing that game. So I'm in the amazing place where I can say, I'm a world champion.
Absolutely.
I'm not the best in the world at making coffee. No one knows what that means.
That's right.
But I was probably for 9 of my 15 minutes at the moment that it mattered. I was the best at playing that game at that time. It came from a lot of work.
You knew how to play the game.
Yeah, and I love the game. Like, I still love the game. I love what it taught me about myself. I love the people that introduced me in coffee and what it helped me learn about coffee, I would never have found a way to do that. I don't think it's right for everyone. I don't think everyone needs to do it. I would like there to be other routes for people whose we all have our problems, and I don't know whether it's narcissism or ego or whatever that makes someone want to stand on a stage and talk about coffee rather than just do it with their friends or whatever. But I would like there to be tools of equal value for people who are less extroverted or feel less comfortable on a stage. And I think that can be a competition. You can design competitions that support that. It doesn't need to be competition. There don't need to be prizes, but we need to bring everyone with us. And where you were saying barista is an entry-level position, it is, and there are exceptions, but there's many fewer head barista jobs than there are barista jobs. But entry-level positions and the first competitors, the first time you compete, when you're first starting that journey, you're kind of the seeds coming in, and maybe there's 1,000 competitors a year around the world, and not all of them will compete again. Sure. Not all of them will benefit from it or will enjoy doing it over and over again. But I think we lose a lot more entry-level baristas than we should already for pay reasons, bad circumstances, and we lose a lot of entry-level competitors that with a little more attention and love or support right at the beginning. I benefited from even before my first regional, there was enough money and interest and attention in the competition that a fairly small company was supporting a pre-training session to help people understand some of those rules and understand some of what was being looked for, which makes it easier. And
a support system.
Exactly, yeah.
One thing about a lot of these technicalities in this conversation that you're mentioning that makes me think about is, where does language barriers come into place with this? I don't know if it's something you thought about, but a lot of things get lost in translation. So is there a way to kind of clarify a lot of those technicalities more across languages? How do we make competing more accessible for those who don't speak English? Or
for that matter, just even people entering as a barista, because we're talking about competitions, we're also talking about the role of barista, right? What can be done in taking the competition as an example, but also baristas people trying to enter the coffee industry as a barista. Right?
So, I tell you, you can laugh at this. This is my stupid idea.
We love laughing, for competition, but don't worry about it.
I kind of recognized this problem way before anyone else did, So, thinking about it, I won my nationals, and the Worlds was coming up in 12 weeks, and I was from competition. Miki Suzuki is one of my absolute heroes. An amazing barista, so much that she did on stage in competitions influenced how I made coffee in my shops or when I was giving training, and also how I competed. And for many years, she would learn her English routine phonetically. She didn't speak great English at that point, and I know she's changed and grown, but also there are many baristas who still do that. There'll be a barista champion of Colombia who's worked really hard to learn a thing. And I was like, you know, maybe I should learn phonetically a routine in Spanish because it's the language of producers. And
That's
really shine a light.
That's
on this
really
problem.
actually cool, though.
Well, my
like
my
that.
coach kind of looked at me and was like, okay, I've seen you make coffee and you're bad at that. And you've been doing it 10 years. So let's not try voices. And later I'm like, and like how appropriative that would be. And like the cultural problems would be doing that really badly.
Hey, but you know what? I saw your promo video in Spanish for the PRF.
Yeah, I can do
and
20
you
seconds.
nailed it, and it was amazing. So you should have tried though a little, you know,
Yeah.
pushed a little further. You know?
It's a dream for one day, but again, in a safe place if we can find one.
Competition in Latin America.
Yeah, I come
right.
and enter with long hair, and I think so. There's a really interesting thing about like what the language should be for it, and there are lots of benefits for exposure for it being in English, and particularly for the worlds that Champion is going to travel all the way around the world, and you know, even ignoring where coffee is produced, where there's no one language, right? We can choose Central America as being really significant, and Spanish being the most common language in most of those countries, but then we have Brazil, it's different. And we have all of Africa and Indonesia with hundreds of different tongues. So English is a commonality where people consume coffee as well. English is not the first language. It's one that works in many places. I would like competition to get to a place where a barista from another country can feel truly confident presenting in their own language, so that they are totally free to express what they want to express. And however we do translators, I don't think the system is bad right now. I think it can work. I think but there is a lack of trust or confidence from competitors to really embrace, this is how I'm going to do it, right? And you see this also with coffee choices. There's, well, we've seen everybody else has done it this way, so I have to do it this way. But I know, you know, I'm super privileged, I'm white, I'm male, and I'm from an English-speaking country. If I was trying to present, you know, for that promo video in Spanish, I have to choose my words really carefully because I don't know the other words. And if I tried to express what I expressed in my World Championship routine in another language, in a second language, I wouldn't even get close. You know, I would go from 15 minutes of content to probably 4.
It's true.
And it would potentially impact, there's so many soft skills in what's being judged and presentation skills, but maybe he's not very comfortable speaking. You know, he's not building a confidence.
It's not your natural language. It's not your mother language. It's you know, it's
and
hard.
Also,
It's like Spanish. Like I've heard Spanish my whole life, and I speak it fluently. But I still would not be comfortable if there's something I wanted to express. I'd have to do it in English at the end of the day, because like there's little intricacies I feel like that I'll never be able to think about in Spanish. Like no matter how many years I've been speaking Spanish, right? So
It's true.
not to diminish in any way what judges do, particularly in the worlds where generally you're not going to have 4 native English speakers or judging you. It's more likely you'll have 4 people who English is their third language.
Wow.
I have judged competitions where people have presented in another language, and the translator has given me like a play-by-play of what they think is being said as best they can. But actually, as a judge, even when it's in the same language, you're listening for the magic words that you need to write down. And you're trying to get a spirit of what you're doing. And often you miss a lot of what the competitor says. Certainly 10 minutes after, you've forgotten almost everything.
It's true.
Right? So it's not the most significant thing, but there is a thing about the natural flow and the confidence. Another thing, so we'll do the other 2 questions there, which is like not so much language in terms of the countries, Spanish or English or French or whatever, but the language of competition, the language of flavors in coffee is also like a secret code that is interpreted differently in different countries.
I never thought it that way, but it's so true.
Like the Worlds is the best version of that because the judging panel is so international, the competitors are so international, so everyone's ready for it. But everyone is brought up with different flavor experiences.
Man, when you think about Asians, the Asian folks, they are exposed to so many more different layers of flavors.
Layers of whole flavor groups.
Insane. It is insane.
And normally those flavors exist in every part of the world, but they come under different names because in one country you're having olives and in another country you're having soy paste, and different products from there. There is a shared language of coffee that the SCA have created, and it has 100 flaws. We can talk about some of those, but it's the thing about democracy. It's the best one we've got.
Sure.
Personally, I don't believe it's really good for barista competition and for espresso, and even for describing filter coffee in a shop, if we only use this codified language. I think it's an internal technical language that we can learn. Too. Yeah, you're limiting, and you're limiting that ability to really connect with someone about a real human experience you've had, and to touch on all those reference points that you've tasted things with. But there is a benefit to understanding that language, understanding that the people you're being judged by have been trained in that language. So that's a reference point that you can use and play with to get your message across. And if you were going to put particularly the barista competition, maybe the Brewers Cup as well, if you're going to try and how do you play that game to score the most highly? There's the technical skills and the points you need to do that, and understand the structure of the competition, what good espresso is, whatever that means. But that understanding of what the judges are used to experiencing, what the other, let's say in your national competition, so every country will have trends, right? Let's say it's Colombia, and I don't know the national competition rules, but let's say everyone has to use Colombian coffee. But there's a wide range of Colombian coffees, but what the different roasters have, what the different processes people are using. So everyone's kind of has an agreed framework of what coffee tastes like based on what's cool and what's not cool and what's selling, what's not selling. If you understand that, you can choose a coffee that is either really plays to the trends and the fashions that will succeed, or one that really contrasts from that or veers away from it, but at least you can describe it with reference to those. Because you know that 10 of the other competitors are going to be using the X coffee that is in vogue right now, processed this way. They're going to use the same flavor descriptors, and there's real value in standing out and going for the gap. But you can't go for the gap unless you understand what the other stuff is, right? The other thing about language was just for baristas and coming into coffee, and from my perspective, so in the UK, barista is an entry-level role. It is better paid than some entry-level roles, but not really. The skill's valued a bit more, but it's not valued financially, really. But most of the baristas historically were people from other countries, communities coming in and taking these entry-level jobs that people wanting a career in something else wouldn't touch. And so you got, in the UK, lots of broader European people, lots of Australian people and New Zealand people with good English who are there for a 2-year kind of fun visa, whatever. So they're filling all those spaces, and they bring a real multicultural sense of coffee. And it's like you go into any kitchen in Europe, Spanish, you'll hear it, right? Whether that's the kitchen porters or it's the chefs speaking French, there are different languages in those spaces, and there's different value that you can demonstrate in different ways. If your customers are all speaking a language, confidence and comfort with that really helps you grow. But the best way to get that is being exposed to that situation every day. So it's about giving people that opportunity to improve their English or improve whatever the native, best way that I'm going to improve my Spanish is working bar in a store here for 6 months, and I'll get really good at answering 12 questions. Right?
It's true. Yeah.
But it is a barrier, and it's an unfair barrier when we're not paying enough to get somebody who's got a degree in spoken English or a high level of qualification in that. And there's room to be done there in valuing the other skills those people bring, which is they're used to making coffee really fast. They're used to working in a cafe. They're used to working with customers, which is the hardest thing to train. Somebody wanting to serve customers, and again, speaking from the UK, it may be different now, but 20, 30 years ago, a career in hospitality was completely acceptable in France. In Switzerland, you go to culinary school, you might learn to be a restaurant manager, and there are degree courses in the US to running restaurants or and culinary school, whatever, where those skills are valued. In the UK, we don't value that career path, and so the best skilled people, the most qualified people, will be foreigners, right? And I actually think one of the reasons I love cafes the most is they're diverse spaces.
Absolutely.
You'll meet people you've never met before.
And that's the power of coffee, though.
Yeah, because it attracts people from all different communities because it's weird, addictive properties or great flavor, whatever it is. But also, you go into any cafe, there's going to be 3 or 4 cultures represented, and they're all going to have slightly different relationships with coffee, with what they drank growing up, what they think good is. And that's wonderful stories, wonderful experiences.
So, I mean, that little bit was just my mind right now is like,
yeah, my mind is spinning too. I'm like, I have a million other questions that I want to ask.
Just about just like only thinking about like flavors and careers, like we can go down another rabbit hole, but I think we can save it for another one. But because before we kind of wrap it up, what I really also want to kind of touch on, kind of shifting topics a little bit, is I want to hear a little bit about when you won World Barista Championship. I can't even speak English.
We're talking about languages.
Yeah. What kind of been like what has been like your success to post success competing? If that makes sense. Like, have there been challenges? Like, have you had your struggles of like trying to find your place again in coffee? Can you continue to be relevant in like, still helping the industry in what you want to do? Like, what's it been like for you?
So there have been ups and downs. There's like the personal thing that for 9 years I did this thing and really valued it and it helped me learn. And there's this consistent kind of conceit that once you've won the World Championship, you most often don't compete again. And that's good. I don't want to compete at that level again. I don't think I have the carrot at the end is no longer as valued, important to me, because I have it, because I got it. To get another one, I'm not hungry for that. And at the same time, I'm more aware than ever of how kind of destructive some parts of it are, particularly that doing it every year and whatever the amount. If I had applied the amount of effort and energy that I applied to it, and you can say money, like we put money into it, we put lots of stupid things that I thought, glass pipettes that I thought would make all the difference, smash them. But effort is the hardest one. If I'd have applied that same amount of effort to any other one thing in my career, would I have ended up in an equal level of kind of prestige and value? And probably yes, right? Like, and again, I know lots of people who have succeeded on a different set of terms, and have been able to continue that and continue growing in that direction. That's the end of that competition journey, and it felt like I couldn't do it again, and I don't want to do it again. But there was something missing from my life, and I had to find new ways to learn to grow.
Amazing.
So that was difficult emotionally, but it also forced me to, okay, well, so now I don't have the excuse of competition. So what am I going to apply myself to?
With all that energy and all that.
Yeah. And I'd say it's been really hard to find anything similar. I still have lots of things that I'm putting energy into. And at some point, one of them will become the one that is my next 10 years or 20 years journey. And maybe I won't win at that or succeed in whatever the goals are, but maybe I'll get X way along the track. I miss having that clarity of vision the competition gave me.
Yes.
Post-competition, I tried to spend a lot of years juggling. I loved my job at the time with the roastery. I was really proud of what we did. It gave us great opportunities to grow that further. So I didn't want to leave my job. So I juggled some of the responsibilities / opportunities that you get as a world champion with doing that thing. And that was really hard. I enjoyed the opportunities. I would have liked more of them. Or to grab hold of more of the ones that came and not say no to some of them because of the work thing. But I also really valued the team that I built, the company I was working for. I love being a part of that too.
You left a legacy. You're leaving a legacy. You built something that it's standing, it's staying, and it's growing.
So I left that company a month or two ago, and now I'm doing consultancy and floating, which really is taking hold of some of those opportunities, some of which are tied to competition and some of which are tied to the work I did there and the knowledge I have from that. But I left that a little while ago, and it's a little bit sad. They don't need me. There's better people at every little thing that I did along the way in that business. Nothing changes with me going with what they're doing. And actually that proves that for me it was the right thing, because if I'm not having that kind of impact, I should be having it somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
And it's hugely egotistical, but I want to I feel I have more in me. I don't know what it is, but I have more to give and more to learn and more to grow.
So true.
So, and I'm pretty sure everyone feels that. How successful I've been at doing the competition things, I don't know. I don't know how you measure it. I look at other world champions and what they've done and built. And, some of them I'm jealous of. I wish I'd had done all the things that they've done, but I also know that none of that came just from their trophy. That came from the work they put in before and after.
So true.
And some of that work I don't want to do. I like having conversations with people. I don't mind it being a microphone or a camera, but I don't want to edit video. It doesn't play to my strengths. So like, I don't want to.
Well, you know what though?
Yeah.
I gotta say this to you. I was like incredibly proud. I actually was scrolling through Instagram one day, not long ago, and then all of a sudden, something pops up and it's your image of you talking in front of a camera, incredibly high level quality video.
Yeah.
I know this guy. And then I go in and I look on the top, who's the Instagram handle? Masterclass. And I was like, holy,
Yeah.
I know this guy, man. So like, just going into what you're saying, to have that opportunity to have a class on preparing coffee.
Yeah.
With Masterclass, that you have like world-renowned people in their specific fields. I've watched several Masterclass, from Howard Schultz to, how do you do the best pictures you can make, right?
Yeah.
So you have the best of the best presenting a class. Serena Venus Williams.
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton, it's amazing. And you're there with that caliber of professionals in their field amongst legends. So the question is, how did you feel when you got that first initial email or a call from them? Because this is like big deal.
Yeah.
Right?
So like, and I can also put this with, so when I won the UK Nationals, it was time. I put in the work, but I had this dream and I was close and I got there. So there wasn't really imposter syndrome. There wasn't really this fear about it. I had this dream that I would stand on the WBC stage and compete like all these people that I admired. And I thought I'd come 37th. That 37th would have been a bad day, but that was my kind of expectation. It informed some of the decisions we made, some of the risks we took. When I won the World Championship and I heard my name, instantly, like all those self-doubts and stuff like that, it doesn't help with any of them. It just, you just go, well, if I won this, it must have been luck, or if I won this, maybe it doesn't mean anything, and it's like, it's just luck, or it's craziness or whatever. And I know that's not true, but that's
not true.
That's how this works.
The
and I'm sure there are some of the world champions who haven't felt that, because confidence gets you a long way. Confidence helps with all those things, but I'm sure all of them felt, if it had been the day before, it wouldn't have been me. And I'm totally comfy with that. I'm totally comfy with, it was me that day, but it wouldn't have been every day. So there's imposter syndrome and there's doubt, but you've got this thing and it opens doors. When I got that call, I think, yes, there was some of that kind of imposter syndrome and doubt, but also like, where'd you get my number? Like, how did you find me? And then why'd you find me? Why'd you choose me? Yeah. And I'm sure there were choices involved, and some of them will be they're choosing from a smaller group. They want the prestige of the title to like underscore the projects they're working on and stuff like that. That brings audiences, that brings attention. They're looking for experts, and how do you say who's an expert in coffee? Like, I know there are many people with greater expertise in many areas of coffee, some with greater expertise in all the areas that I play at. But that's part of it. I think they were also looking for someone they felt was a good communicator and someone who would be up for that. And there's also probably contract restrictions. They don't want somebody who's working with a similar partner or whatever. And for me, it was a perfect opportunity because it was, I don't want to make the videos. I want to communicate things. I want to share things. So here's a great opportunity to share some things and also to reach new audiences. And I love coffee people. If I was to make a YouTube channel, right, it would be for the trade, and it would be boring. Like, even that word, the trade, I don't know what that is, the industry. But like, I feel most comfortable talking to other baristas or other people working in coffee who share like similar ideas of coffee to me. Home baristas scare the hell out of me because they ask such questions, and I'm like, yeah, I know that this will make an impact, but I don't care about that, because I think this, you can buy 17 new toys for your espresso machine, but honestly, buy better coffee. Fixes everything.
Absolutely.
And you can do both. I know you can do both. But I'm also against the purity of the perfect shot. Like, I'm all about, I want to serve the best possible coffee to every customer or every guest that I have. And to do that, you have to accept there's tolerances. There are things that you're not in control of. I want to remove as many of them as I can, but I don't want my endeavor to remove those to get in the way of me serving people. So if I was making videos, I'd be talking to my own people who already know everything I know. They have the same books, they listen to the same people. Masterclass was accessing an audience of people who are kind of like coffee adjacent. That they make videos, or they're I don't know, acting coaches or tennis superstars, but they have a tangential interest in coffee, and they're like, I want to do that better. And so to be the first person, and I think this is true in cafes as well. If you're the cafe that first changes someone's mind or introduces them to something new, to a new world of coffee that they never had before, they are loyal and they are with you for life. And the same if you're a roaster who introduces a barista to the first amazing coffee they taste. When they move shops, they take you with them. They always remember that, and they always value it. And to be that for this huge audience across a lot of the US, across a lot of Europe, who are kind of thinking about coffee. They're not sure where to go, and to impact that, and also show them that there's this world that you can dip into, and the real goal is for every 100 who watch Masterclass, maybe one of them Googles World Barista Champion and sees what Borum just did, or what baristas do at, it's only one way of describing the highest level, but what baristas can do at the highest level of their craft. And maybe they think about baristas differently. The more customers value baristas, the more employers will pay them.
Absolutely. It is true. And honestly, that's being a true ambassador for coffee. You went on the world stage, you won. But what I love about this conversation is always hearing your heart for people. Your heart for your peers, your heart for people wanting to get into coffee, your heart about the people that is involved in coffee. It's always not just about you. It's how you can help other people be better, right?
This is a difficult space, but it touches on lots of the little things we've touched on. If I was to criticize the specialty industry as a whole, or like one of the problems we have, and a problem that I have as well, is because it's special, it has to taste good. And we have this little blind spot about what everything has to be the best, right? And sometimes that search for perfection, and like I describe it as it's hedonism, right? So it's like, I'm going to pay more to have something that's better than I can even imagine. And I'm going to pay the most to have the best, or I'm going to work harder and buy these new toys or do whatever to have this best experience. But actually, for me and for lots of people involved in coffee, that isn't at the heart of what specialty was about. Specialty was, if people make better things and we reward them for making better things, there'll be more better things, but also people are being rewarded for the work they do.
Yes.
And it was about changing or transforming the way coffee was bought and sold, and valuing the product for all of what it can be. And we were tasting a coffee earlier that's a blend from a region in Colombia, right? And it was phenomenal, and it was good. It's not gonna win the Cup of Excellence, maybe. I don't know. But it doesn't need to be something that is valued more highly than generic Colombian coffee or supermarket coffee or a espresso blend for a big name, for a brand. It's like the idea of specialty and focusing those producers and the mill and the roasters and all of those stages on how do we make this a little bit better? How do we make it cleaner, crisper, better? Better at being what it is as well. I'm not trying to change it. That has added value to lots of lives and has had a social, economic, potentially environmental good. And I think on my best days, I think that's what I'm in it for. I'm still blown away when I taste a coffee that I couldn't imagine. And I want to taste the best of Panama this year, the number one. I'll pay crazy money to drink a cup of it. But it's not what the whole industry is about.
But you're not going to drink that every day.
No, and no one will.
Exactly.
And no one should. That wouldn't, if you drank that every day, if you had enough money, buy the top 5 lots, all, 125 kilos of them added up, that wouldn't last me a year, right? It's just not enough coffee.
Yeah.
But if you had all that to yourself, you'd be missing out on everything else that coffee is. The same if you did that if you only drank auction or winning coffees, you'd be missing something, or only coffees from any one country. And I love the fact that coffee can still surprise me from every country, that I can be surprised by where it's come from. I can be surprised by what someone did with how they brewed it. Or I can be surprised because the coffee was shit, but the person was so nice to me.
Exactly right.
That I don't feel bad about spending $4, $5 on it.
Exactly right. Yeah, I think that I think specialty wanted, the whole terminology and the whole industry about specialty coffee really had this incredible intention of bringing awareness and raising the bar in general. And I agree with you, everything you said. For us here at Ally, for example, we made this conscious decision for the business to really almost drop the term specialty because we are a coffee company.
Yeah.
And we work with coffee people. And coffee people, they don't only grow specialty coffee, right? And so they're not less valuable because they don't do so, because they are not capable of doing so, because they face different challenges because it's an agricultural product.
Yeah.
How do we value coffee properly for what it is as a whole? Yeah. If we want to change the industry, we need to start looking at coffee and all that entails.
So I don't know how we get there. I don't know that we should get there, but one of the things I've often thought about is because we talk a lot, roasters talk a lot about dollars per pound paid. That shows how good we are, like the highest price we paid or the average price we paid. And it means something. It's useful. It's good for comparison. And even the dollars per pound of the C market, it means something. It's useful. It helps bits of the business work. But it isn't really what the farmers care about. It's not the metric that matters to them, because if you sell 25 kilos at $10,000 per pound, but the rest of the coffee you're producing you're selling in the C market, doesn't mean anything.
What's the impact?
Yeah. And there's some people that can build a business around luxury goods, and I love it, and I will buy into it as part of what I enjoy. But generally, I think most farmers are business people, and often they've inherited a business model that is a bit broken and a bit shit, and this is not coffee specific. I think a lot of the problems in the coffee industry, a lot of the problems for the consuming side, the cafe side, are very similar to most of the problems facing hospitality restaurants in each economy. Most of the problems in the value chain up until that point, up until maybe the roaster gets it, are exactly the same value chain issues you get with almost every commodity.
It's true.
And so one of my pet peeves, and this is completely out there and not helpful, but I am not against veganism. I'm going to say this now. I'm also not against oat milk. I quite like it.
Me too.
Some taste good, some taste less good, but it's a good thing, right, that it exists. But it comes with some challenges and some problems.
Absolutely.
But I am against, particularly in the UK, where we have a dairy industry, we have lots of people that if you wrote their lives down in numbers, the metric might change, but they have exactly the same problems as coffee. So they're basically old men who have no other choice except to get up at 4 a.m. Their kids have gone and become doctors or gone and have real lives, right? Yeah,
we're gonna talk about this tomorrow at PRF. Bridging the gap, the age gap. And I think that something that we came up with is it's a mixture of experience and innovation.
Yeah.
And that way you can actually collaborate. You get a father that is older, who's been doing this for several years, and then you get a kid that is just how do I get into this?
Yeah, there has to be that attractive thing.
And they think differently because they are younger, they have more technology, a better technology sense. Yeah. But it's not like the dad versus the son or the dad versus the daughter. It's pretty much how can we be a team, utilize your experience.
And create this route for each other.
And that goes for different industries, right?
So I don't come from a farming family, but I come from a place where there's lots of farming, and I see all those problems there, and I spend so much time talking about we should make coffee better and we should do these things here. And sometimes, we all have this bad idea, and I should buy a coffee farm. That's definitely what I should spend the next 10 years doing, right?
Don't do it.
Yeah. No one has ever said you should do that. No one has ever said you should do that. But sometimes I'm just aware that, if I really want to address those problems or find other ways around those problems, I shouldn't buy a coffee farm. It should be a farm right next to where I grew up, where I understand more of the reality of it and more of the situations and try and solve some of those problems there. But my real thing is, there's nothing wrong. In fact, there's something really good about the rise of alternative milks and changes in consumption, but we shouldn't leave people behind if we're for a just transition for lots of coffee farmers, we should also be for a just transition for lots of dairy farmers.
True.
And if we're against communities dying because younger generations moving away, we should look to our own backyard as well, to my own backyard as
So
well
true.
as to ones on the other side of the world where, I can come in as a white guy and fix everything great.
So true.
I think a lot of those problems are also for good reasons. So I wouldn't want my kids, when they're just starting out, to start with all their hands tied behind their backs. And if I was a coffee farmer growing commodity coffee, a lot of years, maybe the last couple of years have been a touch better, but they probably haven't. I wouldn't encourage them to follow their path. I say, find a new path, don't end up like me, right? If I wouldn't want that for my kids, why would I want that for anybody else's kids?
Absolutely.
Right?
I agree.
So I think we have to, if that's something we value, and I value that, I value the idea of small communities that invest in themselves and grow and look after each other. If we want to encourage that, we have to create routes to do that, and that has to be intentional. And I don't think we'll ever get there doing that by adding a few bucks on every pound we pay for coffee.
I agree.
I think we should separate it or pay for something else.
Yes.
And say, okay, we're going to pay this for coffee. It's not a great price, but if you work with us, or it's a good price, but it's not out there, but we also pay this. And this is the deal you get for working with us.
That makes
if you want
sense.
to sign up to it.
That's really interesting.
Well, Dale, I feel like I got a masterclass just in like an hour.
It's been amazing.
Yeah.
It's been really amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It was good.
Having me. It's always nice to talk to people that are willing to push boundaries and think about things differently and let me rant. And I hope some of what I said other people can say better later.
I don't know about that. I think that, honestly, it's been such a great honor. And I think, you're such a humble guy and you're selling yourself short. I think you have built an amazing legacy. You have an incredible heart for people, and you're still young. And I know you're going to do some amazing things in the next few years. So if you need someone to actually consult in all things coffee, that's your guy. So
yeah, I'm kind of open for business or not, but it's more like solving interesting problems is always worthwhile. That's part of what made competition so interesting. It's part of what made lots of parts of the coffee business interesting to me, be it in a cafe or be it with the problems that our roastery was facing as we grew and stuff like that. So chances to solve interesting problems are always worthwhile. Give me a call. And if you don't have interesting problems, find some, because that's where you'll grow.
And how can they find you?
I don't know.
Instagram?
Send me a nice
Yes,
photo on Instagram
absolutely.
with a cheerful
Absolutely.
message at Acoustic Coffee, or email contact@daleharris.coffee, which is a whole new thing.
Amazing. Dale, thank you so much, brother. It's been a pleasure. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't miss this episode.